Hello, I'm Paul Check, and welcome back to the Diamond Mind, Growing Wealth Through Knowledge. Today I'd like to deliver gem number 2 from the Diamond Mind. Abs in or abs out? As I'm sure many of you know, there's a long-running controversy, especially amongst power lifters, Olympic lifters, and competitive bodybuilders and all sorts of athletes as to whether you should draw your abs in when lifting a load or whether you should push them out. Interestingly enough, numerous certifications and books on weight training suggest that you should push your belly button out into a weight belt or push it out when lifting a heavy load. Well, I'd like to help all of you understand how this difference of opinion probably came about and give you some thoughts as to what might actually be the authentic way to view this question, abs in versus abs out, based on anatomy, how the body works. So let's have a look at this very important question. Here in my diagram, you can see a picture of someone getting ready to do a squat. So in the first picture here, they've just racked the bar on their back. Now, I teach athletes and individuals to take a deep diaphragmatic breath, and as you take a deep diaphragmatic breath, the diaphragm drops down into the red position, which pushes the belly out. As you know, if you take a deep belly breath, that tightens the diaphragm. When the diaphragm drops down, it has to push the organs down, which causes the belly to expand, as you see here. Yet, with the belly out, as I described in Gem 1 from the Diamond Mind series, the inner unit muscles are not turned on. They're just in a relaxed state. If they were turned on, you wouldn't be able to get your organs to drop down, and the diaphragm would not be able to effectively lace together the rib cage and stabilize the spine. Yet, prior to initiating the movement, which is very, very important, because as you initiate the movement of a squat or a deadlift or bending over to pick anything up, the body bends forward, as you can see here, which increases the lever arm or the load in the low back. So as we initiate the movement, prior to starting the movement, once we've got a nice full breath, which is important because the pressure of the air in the thorax or the lungs creates what's called pneumatic pressure in the lung cavity, which has to create a stiffening system against the abdominal cavity. If a person drew their belly button in or tightened their abdomen and there was no air or tension in the diaphragm, then all the abdominal contents would simply rise up into the chest and you'd be no more stable. So breathing in is critical to stabilize the thoracic cavity against the abdominal cavity. As you initiate the movement, the belly button should be drawn inward so that you create inner stiffness and tension in the inner unit muscles depicted here in red. And that inner unit stiffness stabilizes the entire spinal column and core to give the arms and legs a working foundation and to create a stable structure to support the load. Now, as we drop down into the load and we approach the sticking point, the resistance in the spinal muscles goes higher and higher as the leverage against the back gets less and less favorable. And that amount of pressure from the back muscles requires a counter pressure from the abdominal muscles. So the transverse abdominis can quickly meet its match with any kind of heavy lifting. And therefore what happens is, in order for the transverse abdominis to do its job, being a very thin sheet muscle, it has to switch to eccentric motor control. You may remember from basic muscle physiology that a muscle is 30 to 40% stronger with an eccentric or a lengthening load than it is with a concentric or shortening contraction. So what I believe to be the confusion is that many weightlifting coaches who may not have understood the intricacies of the anatomy of the core, which takes quite a bit of study, probably saw strong people lifting heavy weights and noticed that their belly buttons were coming out or pushing into a weight belt. It would be easy to feel with a weight belt because you'd feel your belly hitting the weight belt. And they may have actually thought that you should push your abdomen out because they saw these strong people's bellies coming out. When in actual fact, the transverse abdominis, as I described in Gem 1, must pull inward in order to stabilize the spine and tighten the fascia along the back. But because the weight is so heavy, the diaphragm has to contract with greater and greater force to hold the spine together, and its strength is great enough to push the organs down with such intensity that it forces the belly button out, yet the transverse abdominis and inner unit muscles are now under eccentric load, making them significantly stronger than they would be if you just pushed your belly button out, which would be to shut the transverse abdominis off and leave only the spine, the discs, and the ligaments to hold that potentially significant load. So, a key point here is that belts can be useful to the injured. If someone just draws their belly button in and that increases the pain in their spine, that means that pain is shutting down the inner unit. And a person like that should wear a belt or a corset as a reminder to keep good spine alignment, but they should not be lifting any kind of compressive loads if drawing the belly button in hurts, because it means the inner unit is being shut off by pain. In a functional body, the inner unit draws in, and as they accept the load or begin the movement, to the degree that the body needs an eccentric contraction to stabilize the load, you will see the belly button coming out. Yet, unlike wearing a weight belt, the belly button is coming out under eccentric contraction, which means it's increasing stiffness and stabilization of the spine. So these questions are very, very important, but when you understand how the anatomy works, it's quite obvious as to what's happening and how to go about doing it. So what's the key take-home point here? Before you begin the movement, take a deep diaphragmatic breath, draw the belly button in, keep the pressure in your thorax, go through the movement, and as you pass back through the sticking point, let the breath out through pursed lips. That forced exhalation keeps the inner unit active through the sticking point, and by breathing through pursed lips, it decreases the pressure on the heart, which comes by way of the drawing in maneuver or the Valsalva maneuver. If you have to hold your breath through the whole movement because the weight is high enough, that's okay, but it's not a good idea to do that too frequently because it can give you weightlifter's heart. So now you know some of the basics. I'd love to share much more with you in my scientific core conditioning correspondence course, which is loaded with gems from the diamond mind. My scientific back training course is the sister course and looks at the other relationships. Core looks at the core relationships, and the back looks at the back interrelationships, and the two programs together make a functional unit, and those are both prerequisites for the more advanced training program, Check Exercise Coach. You can order these products at checkinstitute.com. You're welcome to visit checkconnect.com to see all sorts of free and subscription education there that I've put together for you. So thanks for joining me today. Look forward to sharing more from the Diamond Mind with upcoming gems. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm Paul Check. Have fun.